I'm doing great for having me. I'm really happy to be here. It's been a long time without any of these type of events, so I'm very excited. Right. Like millions will probably watch this, right? Excellent. Sure. Um, Tom Deady, you already mentioned my name. My first novel, Haven, won the Bram Stoker Award in 2016 for superior achievement in a first novel, which is still surreal to me. I still have to look at the award and make sure I didn't dream the whole thing. And since then, I've put out several novels, novellas, a short story collection, and my first young adult horror novel came out this past summer. So I'm just having a blast writing stuff I love to write, and here we are. That's a novella. It's on the preliminary ballot for long fiction. It's called Of Men and Monsters. It is, I guess, technically adult, but I think it would be fine for young adults to read as well. It is 100% coming of age horror. I'm excited. I think there's a sense of comfort, especially if the reader is from a small town, that it's something they recognize from their own childhood, maybe. And there's always a, a sense of security, whether it's a false sense of security or not, because there's a lot of almost trope-like characters that show up in a lot of these books. There's generally the kindly priest and a sheriff or some type of police officer or a teacher. And these are the type of people everybody knew, whether or not they grew up in a small town or not. I grew up in Malden, Massachusetts, which is actually one of the larger cities in Massachusetts. But when I was a kid, I thought I lived in a small town because my neighborhood was very kind of contained. It was a very residential neighborhood, and we had the corner store we walked to, and we could walk to Malden Square, the downtown, and it just never felt like a city to me. So I guess unless you grew up in like the heart of Boston or New York, a lot of suburbs these days even mask themselves as small towns. So I just think there's a sense of familiarity there that people are comfortable with. And it's a great dichotomy when all of a sudden something goes really bad in that quaint little setting. Uh-oh. I can hear you. Okay. I just confirmed. Sorry to interrupt. I just confirmed they can't. They can see the captions. So yeah, like I said earlier, I think it's creating that sense of recognition and comfort in the reader, and whether or not you're going to take that and flip it upside down, and because what I love about small town horror is the town itself becomes almost a character in the book itself, and that character can be good or it can be bad. In Stephen King's It, for example, it opens up with Mike Hanlon asking, "Can a whole town be haunted?" And so Derry itself is kind of this malevolent force in the book. But in a lot of other stories that are small town related, that the town is a good place, but something bad happens or somebody bad comes to town. So it's creating that sense of making the reader feel like they recognize this place and they could see themselves belonging in a place like this, and then doing whatever bad thing you're going to do to them. So yeah, what I try to do is create a really a sense of reality that it's not always this idyllic town. It's not always perfect with the little gazebo on the common and the old men playing checkers in the park every day. There's got to be kind of this balancing of the perfect little town with what we all know happens in the shadows of these small towns. No town is all good like that. So what I try to do is create that facade of the town everybody wants to grow up in, but make sure that even from the very beginning, there's a sense that something isn't quite right there. And I think that's the mix that's hard to achieve, but if you do it, it makes a great story. And I'll use an example of Josh Mallerman wrote a book called Goblin, which is really a series of 6 novellas, and they're all set. They're kind of interlinked, but they can also stand alone. But they're all in a town called Goblin, and the town itself takes on this surreal aspect of being such a big part of the story because there's just such bizarre happenings, and it's only in Goblin. So it has to be done right, or it looks like a really kind of lame cliche if you screw it up, I think. Yeah, so it's a great point, and I think it's funny because, like I said, when I was growing up, I thought I lived in a small town, and it was really just a small part of a city. But obviously, I had been to other small towns in Massachusetts and Maine and New Hampshire and New England, and there's something to be said. I mean, there's similarities in a lot of cases, and there's a lot of weirdness in a lot of cases. There's these kind of like I'll use the word secrets, but maybe traditions or stories that go around these small towns that all the locals know, but if you were just driving through, you wouldn't know. And I always found that very interesting. And then I recently moved to Arizona, which is where I am now. And if you think you have small towns where you are, you don't have any idea what a. There are towns out here that have like 100 people in them, and they are weird. They are very creepy to even drive through. Like I don't want to stop when I'm there because I don't know what's going to happen. Wow. It's a different world. It really is. It's very strange to me, having lived my whole life until this past July in New England, and now coming out here, and yeah, it's a different world. It's completely different lifestyle, different mindset for these people, and I don't know. It's hard to explain until you drive through one of these places that looks like it. It probably looked 100 years ago. It still looks. It's very strange, but it's cool. It isn't, but pretty much everything else I do will probably be a shout out to either it, Boy's Life, or Summer of Night. So, yeah, yeah, it, Summer of Night, and Boy's Life are the big three for me. Those are just, and they fit both categories, of course, too, which oddly enough, there is a huge overlap. It's funny, you don't read a lot of coming of age stories about a kid that grew up in New York City, which is, I don't know why, but you don't. I guess, yeah. I'm struggling to even think of an example of one where a coming of age book is set in any major city. I can't even think of one. Well, those are definitely the big three, but I did throw out another list, small town horror. Salem's Lot obviously is small town, not as well. I guess there is a coming of age component as well, but I look at that one more as small town horror because there's more adult characters. The Lottery by Shirley Jackson is a great example of the town itself as just having such a such a strange tradition. And there's one that a lot of people probably haven't heard of, and I guess this would fit both categories as well. It's called The Summer That Melted Everything by Tiffany McDaniel. And it's about this small town, and this little kid, I think he's 12 or so, shows up out of nowhere and claims he's the devil. And of course, nobody knows what to make of this kid. And all of a sudden, all these bad things start happening, and the town starts thinking, okay, maybe this kid really is the devil. I don't know how this stayed off of so many people's radar. It's really brilliant. It is really good. And of recent, sorry, on television, um, the thing that has captured me most recently is Midnight Mass, which takes place on an island. You couldn't get a much smaller town and more isolation than that. But I thought that was a really, really well done show. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was huge. There's another adaptation that I'm watching now called Chapelwaite, which is actually the adaptation of Jerusalem's Lot by Stephen King. Um, Again, small town. It's. Have you seen that one? It's on Epics, whatever that is. But I had to get it because it's Adrian Brody in a Stephen King adaptation, so I had to have it. Really, really well done. No, they got me with that combination. I had to see it. So it is. It takes place sometime in the 1800s. Yeah, most of the action takes place. The house is called Chapelwaite, and it's about this cursed. It takes its liberties with the story, of course, but um, basically the vampires live in the next town over, which is Jerusalem's Lot. So, but it's really, really well done. Super creepy vampires, and Adrian Brody, who I love. So, is that the M Night Shyamalan? I actually enjoyed that until I didn't love the reveal at the end. Yeah. Yes. I'll have to rewatch. I don't even remember that being an Adrian Brody movie, which is kind of funny. I saw it once when it first came out, but yeah, that's interesting. I love her work, and I haven't heard of that. I'm writing that down. No, she's great. Her work is great. Thank you. That is probably a fact. Right. I do, and I think nostalgia is definitely a big piece of it, and a lot of recent films and TV shows have kind of figured that out since, I guess, probably since Stranger Things burst onto the scene, and now everybody's like, "Wow, if you said something in the '80s, people love it." But the thing that I think draws everybody in is you have a built-in audience. If you're writing a vampire novel, maybe not everybody likes vampires or whatever the genre is, but everybody was a kid. So there's something for everyone in a coming of age tale because everyone struggled with, friendships and first loves and school and relationships with their parents. So a lot of, at least the good coming of age stories that I've read, kind of blend in the normal teenage coming of age angst and problems you face, whether it's bullies or, the death of a parent or real issues that kids that age face. But then they just add in whatever their villain or evil or killer is. So again, I think there's just everybody can see a little bit of themselves in the main character usually if it's done well. So I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to it. It's why I'm drawn to it. Like, I'm very nostalgic about my childhood. So don't we all? I try to. The first thing is, and I think it's more important in coming of age than anything, is to have a character that people can feel empathy towards. And that's true in all, whatever your genre of fiction is, but I think it's really even magnified in the coming of age story because kids are hard. Like, not all kids are likable, and even if we try to portray them that way, it's difficult to create a character that pleases everyone without making them seem like, the cardboard cutout of this, like, Leave It to Beaver kid or something. And everybody's going to be too young to know that reference, so I just really dated myself. But so I don't know. I think you have to create these characters that you want people to like, but there also has to be something about them that feels more real, that not so much that you don't like them, but that they're not all good. There's always a gray area. Every villain has a little good side to them, and every protagonist has a little bit of a dark side to them. So yeah, it's all about believability to me, and empathy. Yep. Yeah, I think with anything, the bigger the cast gets, the more difficult it is to, I guess, keep all your characters believable. Like you don't want it to be, you know, here's my character Joe, he's the smart kid. Here's my character Ken, he's the jock. Here, like the Breakfast Club, right? You have your jock, your brain, your misfit. So you have to kind of make sure that you're blending in characteristics of each into to all those characters, or otherwise it's just going to be like I said, it's just a trope. You're going to have, okay, there's your jock, there's your brain, there's your misfit, there's your, pothead, whatever, bad kid. Yeah, I don't know. You have to make them kind of shades of gray so that they're more realistic and not just a cardboard cutout of somebody's idea of what that type of character should be. And it's hard to do. Like I said, the larger the cast you make, the harder it is to keep them separate, but give them, all these different characteristics, but not make them the same kid, right? Like, I don't know, I guess everybody had a friend that was the wise guy. Everybody had a friend that was, the nerd or the prude. And, you just can't make it one dimensional, I guess. And like I said, the larger the cast of characters gets, I think the more difficult it gets to keep them separate. I I always think all my books and stories are more character driven because that's how I start them. Like I might have an idea, like, oh, I want to write a vampire story, but where do I start with that? I start with a character generally more than a situation, and because I don't outline, I don't know. The characters, as I build the characters, they kind of help me tell the story, I guess. I know that might sound fake, but I don't outline anything. And a lot of times, like Haven is a great example. I've told this story before. Haven's about 500 pages and it was written over like a 15-year period while I was like raising my kids, and I put it away for years and then pull it back out. And a lot of times I would just come up with a character and say, this kid needs to be in my story. And I'd just start with an idea of, oh, this is a girl that got pregnant by one of the bad guys, and like just start writing that character. And it was great because I feel like they all came out of a place that made them real. Like, because I didn't just create them all at once from an outline and say, I'm going to have 5 kids and this. It was very organic. The thing I regret is at the end of the 15 years, when I finally typed the end, and nothing was in order. Nothing had a timeline. Like I basically had to write out an index card, and I have index cards always at hand with like a quick outline of each chapter. And there's about 100 chapters in the book. So my dining room table was just this massive layout of index cards, like, and I'm moving them around trying to see, well, that doesn't go there, that goes there. And it was a nightmare. And I said I'd never do it again, but I do it all the time. So long-winded answer to your question, but yeah, I always write from a place of character more than a place of a plot. Yeah, I like to think, my books are about people and stuff happened to them in the background, but that stuff may happen to be supernatural or a creature or a vampire, but I like to think that when people are reading my books, they care more about, did he make up with his friend or did he get the girlfriend versus like, did he kill the monster? I don't know. That's my ideal world for a reader anyway. Right. Yeah, and I prefer to read that type of fiction as well as write it. So I think that is a great point because uh, cliche, death is a part of life, right? But a lot of kids probably don't have to experience it at a young age. I don't know, maybe their parents are young, so their grandparents are young, and nobody really dies until they're old enough to really deal with it better. But me being the youngest child, my parents were older, my grandparents were older, some of them I didn't even know. So I think it's a great point because I do think how these characters deal with the death in the book, whether it's a victim of whatever's happening in the town or, a death of a parent or a friend. I think that really does shape the character, and it can go in any direction. It could be so profound that it turns them bad depending on the situation, or in Haven, the main character is dealing with the death of both his father and his brother who died in a car accident, and that that thread weaves in and out of the story from beginning to end. In um, and that was done on purpose. My own father passed away when I was not that young, but I think I was 19. Um, and yeah, it always has an impact. In it can do very strange things to you, trying to deal, or trying to process the death. And it certainly plays a huge part in at least the character development that I use when I write my books. I think it's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. And I think that what you just said really nails it, because as kids you watch TV and you see people dying on TV, right? And it's fake, and that. But then when an uncle or a friend dies, you say, well, this is real. And so, like, if an uncle dies, you start your next kind of logical step is, well, if he can die, then my parents can die. Like, this is real. My parents could die. And obviously the next logical step is, I'm going to die. And as a kid, you never really face your own mortality until you have to deal with someone else's death, and your brain starts making that leap, saying, yeah, it's going to happen to all of us. And uh, my daughter was asking me, like, how do we even get through life knowing what's waiting for us? I said, okay, I can't even talk about it, but she's 31. But yeah, she's all grown up, but it's something like, how do we as humans manage to ignore what we know is coming down the road? It's I don't know. It's better not to think about it, right? Exactly. It's easier to write about it than think about it. So Yeah, definitely. Well, I already mentioned the big three, so I won't bore you with those, but a couple probably less well-known ones. Jeff Strand, Autumn Bleeds into Winter, which is about a kid who thinks slash knows his neighbor is a serial killer slash abductor and chooses to deal with it on his own instead of trying to convince the police. And it's beautifully done. Um, Another one is Until Summer Comes Around by Glenn Rolfe. He's another Maine guy, as a matter of fact. Um, it's a vampire story, but it's a coming of age story, and it's in my mind, I've read a lot of his stuff, and it's his best work. There's another. The next two are probably less known, but there's one called The Snowman's Children by Glenn Hirschberg, which I've reread this book time and time again. I went out and bought this like beautiful special edition that Earthling Press did of it. It's just really, really beautiful. You need to read it. I don't want to spoil it. It's kind of a serial killer type thing, but it's very coming of age. And the final one falls into both categories, and I don't know how I even stumbled upon this. It's called The Shadow Year by Jeffrey Ford, and it's a very unique coming of age story again about a killer in a small town. But what makes it really cool is this group of kids that are trying to like figure out who the killer is had actually constructed a model of their town in the basement, and they're like using the model to try to like help them solve the mystery. So it literally makes the town a character in the book, and it's very unique. And some of these like I read these books and nobody ever talks about them, and I'm like, they're so good. um, and in terms of television, I guess we talked about Stranger Things is the big one. There was another one with the girl Sophia Lillis who played Bev Marsh in the new It adaptations. It was only on for 1 year, and I'm not going to be able to think of the name of it. It was kind of an origin story to like what might be a superhero type thing, but you didn't know that until the last episode. But it was really good. Um, I'm not okay with this. Is the name of it? Just popped into my head. Yep. Yeah, and a great coming of age story, which is not a horror story, but I did watch the adaptation of Looking for Alaska. It's a John Green book, who wrote like the one about the kids with cancer, whose name I can't think of. So his books are not horror, but they're definitely coming of age. Really, really cool story. Um, Kind of a mystery, but really good acting in it. That's everything I had on my list that I could jot down, but I'm sure I could peruse my shelves and find a few more, but I guess we don't have time. I'm writing these down because I'm always looking for the next good one. That's like Sophie's Choice, man. I love it all. I would have to say Supernatural. I like that mix of the coming of age, all the thematic stuff and coming of age with something supernatural going on in the background. But at the same time, a lot of the books that I just listed don't have that aspect to it. They're more like kids trying to solve a mystery, like a serial killer or a kid that goes missing in the town or something like that. So I always, my knee-jerk reaction is I love Supernatural, and then I look at what I've been reading and I'm like, there's really nothing supernatural in that. Oh, I left one off the table here that I didn't need to. December Park by Ronald Malfi. Absolutely amazing, big doorstop size 80s style coming of age. Really, really good. Because you read Come With Me and it's the best book you've read in a year. I am so upset that is not even on the preliminary Stoker list. I texted them. I'm like, I don't even know what to say about this, because that was the best book I've read in years. Not knowing what happened. Yeah. The symmetry he uses, and I can't say more about it without making it a spoiler, but I'll tell you what I mean after. It's just the whole book is beautiful. I love it, and all of his books are really good. So get on December Park. It's really, really good. I know, I know. Yep. Night Parade he wrote also, which is kind of a post-apocalyptic book, is just beautiful. Like, he's just a great writer. He should be more well known than he is. Come With Me not being on the Stoker list is criminal to me. I'm still upset about it. There's got to be a movie coming for that. It's a story that people need to hear. It's so good. A series, yeah. All the time. Yeah, like a lot of the settings in Haven are a mixture of parts of Malden, Massachusetts, where I grew up, and parts of the abandoned military base actually existed in behind the house I bought, my first house as an adult that I bought in Rockland, Massachusetts. There was, I mean, it wasn't a munitions base or any of the stuff that goes on, but I used to hike in the woods behind my house, and there were all these old building shells and stuff, and it was an old, yeah. In Haven, I use a story. I tell a story about it's a memory, like a flashback memory of one of the female characters that goes to the beach, and it's like her trying to reconcile her bad behavior with what a great dad she has. And she remembers a time she went to the beach and she had been hung up on this book about pirates and pirate treasure. And her dad had snuck down to the beach early in the morning and buried this old box filled with like junk costume jewelry. And they go to the beach that day, and the girl says, "Let's dig for treasure." And he kind of pushes her over to where to dig, and she finds the treasure. And I actually did that with one of my daughters. So when she read the book, she was like, "I can't believe you put that in the book. That's so great." like my finest father moment there. It is. Yeah, there's little pieces of my childhood in most of what I write. Like I said at the beginning, I'm just very nostalgic. Sometimes I wish I could have a little time machine and not even to go back and relive it, just to go back and see. Like we don't have like home movies or anything from when I was a kid, so I don't know. I just miss it. I had a good childhood, I guess. A lot of people didn't, but I did. It's scary, isn't it? Yeah, I have very isolated memories of like events, and they're not events meaning like holidays or anything, just for whatever reason these goofy little events that stuck in my head, and I'm like, oh, that might have been the summer when I was like 10 or 12, but that summer was like 3 months long. Well, where are the rest of the memories? It's so weird. Not really. I wish I did. Yeah. It's so funny because I still have a lot of, my brother still lives in Malden, and I still have a lot of people that live in that area. So a few years ago, I went back just to kind of walk around Malden where I grew up to all the places, and it's so small. It's like we used to play like wiffle ball in our backyard, and I look at our backyard and it's like it's a postage stamp. How the hell did we play wiffle ball? And then I walk over to we used to go sledding on this hill called Seven Bumps. And I walk over to the hill and I'm like, it's barely like a bump in the road. And we used to think it was like this great sledding hill. It's so funny how like, I don't know, you remember everything as being so grand and you get back there and it's not. That must be harder to even, it's harder to see the change when you're there all the time, but when you go away and come back, it's very jarring. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I went on Google Earth and like Googled my old house that I grew up in, and I like they paved over my entire backyard, and like they basically park their cars back there now. Like, I know it's so sad. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to end it that way. Sure. My website is tomdeedy.com, and you can get copies of all my books there. If you order them through the website, I'll sign them and send them out, inscribe them, whatever. I occasionally blog and just as occasionally send out a newsletter that I actually do a lot of giveaways through my newsletter. So you can sign up at the website for my newsletter. I am also on Facebook, Instagram. I occasionally make an ass of myself on TikTok. You can go see me there. The usual Twitter, the usual places, I guess. It's hard to keep up. I mean, it's just another place to try to be creative, and yeah, it's hard. But I do get a lot of good book ideas of what to read from like Brendan Baker and a few other book talkers that are really good reviewers. Yeah, and like I said, I'll go on there and do like a video book review occasionally, but I don't know. Not really my thing, but I'm trying. Yeah. Yeah, it's very weird for me to just talk to a camera. Like I could do this all night, talk to you, but if I'm just like talking to a camera, I feel like an ass. So I don't do it very often. I don't know. Some people they're so good at it. They must love it. I don't know, or they're better actors than me. Whatever it is. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's hard for me to do. So I'd rather be at like a conference or a convention or something, just talking to people. I don't know. It's been a long time. Well, I'm planning on going to StokerCon in Denver, so I'm hoping we don't get another spike and get that canceled or made virtual again because I'm really looking forward to it for sure. It's a great event every year. They do a very nice job with all of the programming, and then the awards dinner is always a blast. I don't remember who's hosting this year. It used to always be Jeff Strand, who's very funny. And the last one was Jonathan Mayberry, but I think I saw that he was only doing it for that one year, so I'm not even sure who's emceeing the dinner. But yeah, it's a really good event. If you ever get a chance to get to one, you should go. It's a great experience. Yeah. So those are my plans: StokerCon, Nikon, Scares That Care. Um, hopefully they'll all be on. I don't think so. I think I'm going to the late July or early August, whichever it is this year. Williamsburg, whichever. Oh, nice. Is that in Virginia or is that in like Wisconsin or something? It is Virginia because I think they did have a second one year that was in some Midwestern state. I want to say Wisconsin or Michigan or somewhere, and then pandemic. So, but yeah, oh, that's good. The April one, I hope it's fun for you because the one I went to a few years ago was really, really well done. A lot of fun, a lot of great content and programming. Yeah. And it's all for charity, which is great. I think it all worked out just fine. Yeah, it's amazing. So I really appreciate you having me. This really kind of filled a need that I've had for the past couple of years to just talk about horror and books. And so this is great. Thank you so much. Well, there's a lot of main writers. You got Peter Dudar is there, and Glenn Wolfe, and Morgan Sylvia, some guy named King. Yeah, I hear you.